This week's lesson includes the story of the Good Samaritan. It's one that's very familiar to a lot of us. Countries right around the world even have Good Samaritan laws protecting do-gooders who happen to come upon an accident or a problem and want to fix something. So it protects them if anything goes wrong. It's an intrinsic part of our society, and we've got all sorts of social agencies and hospitals in the United States and a bunch of other places around the world where the term Good Samaritan is used. I believe it's even a medical ship for the American military. Someone can correct me on that one, but it's it's something that is so prevalent in our society. You say Good Samaritan, and the story comes into place, and it's one of those stories that can be transported from first century into 21st century fairly easily. If we just look at the superficial reading of it, where this person has been beaten, they're left alone. Two members of the establishment walk by, a third member walks by, or a third person walks by, has some wealth, sees the problem, and decides to treat this person and make sure that they continue being treated. And Jesus asks which is the one that we should follow. Now, again, very simple story. It's a story of showing how to have compassion and caring. However, there's so much more to it if we actually take it out of the 21st century and put it back into the first century, because that is not what the earliest Christ followers would have heard. The earliest Hebrews would have heard a very, very different story. First of all, it starts with a lawyer. Well, a lawyer was not exactly someone who practices law the way we understand it. In some passages, it even says a legal expert on the laws of Moses. So we're talking someone who works for the synagogue, who may or may not be comfortably well off, but comes to Jesus and says, "Teacher." Again, a word that we associate with respect. Not so much in the first century. The majority of people, especially in the Gospel of Luke, when they approach Jesus, they say Lord or Sir. But he is just saying teacher. So worker, staff, person, hey you over there who does this thing. I've got a question for you. So right away, we have a scenario that doesn't include respect for Jesus. That's not how 21st century ears would have heard it. And he says, how do I get eternal life? Because there's a conversation going on right now in the first century in the synagogues between the Sadducees and the Pharisees, those who believe in resurrection and those who do not. It is a conversation in the 21st or in the first century rather, and it's something that this person obviously was trying to trick Jesus into giving an answer. Do you side with the Sadducees or the Pharisees? The Sadducees, remember, are the rich and the elite, the ones who are quite in concert with Rome. The Pharisees are the more educated of the people. They also have additional jobs. They may or may not be wealthy in their own right, but they are the ones that most people go to. In fact, they're the ones that Jesus has most of his interaction with. So this person who does law in the temple is trying to set Jesus up. So who do you side with, Sadducees or Pharisees? Do you believe in eternal life or not? Is there death at the end? Is there resurrection? Which is your answer? And Jesus, of course, does his typical thing, throws the question back on him and says, okay, what does the law say? You're the legal expert. What does it say? And so he quotes Leviticus and Deuteronomy, I believe, about how we're to help our neighbor and to love God and to serve others. And Jesus says, "Got a story for you." Now, stories, as we all know, are wonderful when they start with threes. You know, priest, lawyer, and doctor went into a bar. The good guy, bad guy, and someone else comes out. We always know that there's three involves a group of people all together. You know, the Marx Brothers. We expect to have the story told by Jesus, including the Levite, the priest, maybe the lawyer, maybe the rabbi, maybe the Sadducee. We don't know. That's not where Jesus goes, however. Jesus set the stage with a man who'd been hurt. Nothing spectacular, nothing stands out. Just this person is lying in a ditch, hurt. Now, the road Jesus puts the story on is between Jerusalem and Jericho, which is right down the hill. It was notorious at the time for being a place where there was robbers and bandits all over the place. You did not travel at night because you were at risk. You didn't travel alone because you were at risk. This is why Jesus being left alone at the temple was such a big deal, because if he wasn't traveling with the family caravan and his parents rushed back at night to get him, they would have gone up this hill into Jerusalem and been at risk themselves just to get their son. So the road was dangerous. Everybody knew that. And Jesus sets them on the road. And then a priest comes by, walking down the hill, sees what's going on, keeps going. A Levite. Now, Levites were a family. They were one of the 12 tribes of Isaiah. No, I can't remember. 12 tribes of Jacob, sorry. And they were all given special privilege. Now, Levite was the only tribe not given land. Joseph was the other son not given land, but his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, were given sons in their place. So by the time you take out Joseph and Levi and put in Ephraim and Manasseh, that is your 12 land masses, your 12 peoples that are essentially named after the 12 sons. Joseph, of course, he was followed down. He had two sons representing him, but the Levites, they were special. The Levites were, and this is all legend and tradition, there's no history supporting all of this, but the tradition of the Levites was that they were the family of Moses' brother, and they were spread out through the lands so that they would be the priestly class in everybody else's territory. They didn't have their own geographic territory. They shared everybody. So the Levites, the traditional class of the priesthood, also, someone representing this, also walked down this hill in the evening by themselves, saw the man in distress, kept on going. And then the Samaritan came by. Now, there's a few things we have to put in context there. The Samaritans were the most hated people as far as those in Judea and Jerusalem are concerned. The fact that he was going down the hill the same way meant he was coming from Jerusalem, where he would have been in hostile territory. Since this is 2022, the closest modern example I can give you is if a Russian oligarch who was supporting the war against Ukraine was walking alone in Ukraine, saw a Ukrainian on the ground, picked them up, paid for their hospital care, and took care of them. That's the closest equivalent we have. These were family members, essentially, religious family members, who could not tolerate each other. So for the Hebrew people who were hearing Jesus tell the story in the first century, priest, Levite, and a Samaritan, what's going on here? That's not who they expected to be the third party. And the Samaritans came with their own history. When Jacob made the temple in Shiloh, I believe, he put the rock and everything, and the Samaritans believed that was where the true temple was. That was where the true house of God was supposed to be. In the Assyrian exile, when the 10 northern tribes were essentially taken off the land, the Assyrians brought in other people to live in the land of Israel and the land of Samaria. Even though they followed the Hebrew tradition, those in Judah didn't think they were legitimate Hebrew people. Top it all off, in around the year 120, 130 BCE, the head of the government or the head of the military, one of the two, in Jerusalem, attacked where the temple was in Samaria and destroyed it, because there should be only one temple, and it was the temple in Jerusalem. There was no love lost between these, and Jerusalem, the Judeans, were the primary aggressor. But the Samaritans also treated them like garbage, the way they had been treated back. So it's a lot of anger. So the Samaritan, who's wealthy, comes along and sees this person, picks them up, takes them to an inn, provides money for them, and keeps providing until they are well. Jesus asks this legal expert of Moses, Who showed mercy? And of course, the answer is the Samaritan. But knowing what we know now, you can almost picture this lawyer, this legal expert, who was trying to catch up Jesus in which side of the Pharisees and Sadducees he was going to come down on. You could almost hear him choke out the word Samaritan, because that was right for the story, but it was wrong for his complete cultural context. There have been so many people in my job who've been trying to justify away the priest or the Levite. One of the famous, most favorite excuses is the concern of ritual impurity. But the fact is that doesn't track in Hebrew law. There was as many ways to get clean as there was to be defiled in as far as death was concerned. And they didn't even go to check that he was dead, because he obviously wasn't. He got better. So justifying the priest and the Levite is not helpful. It doesn't help the story. What really matters is that these two beings were scared. That's what Jesus is trying to point out. They're at night, they're alone, someone has already been attacked. They could be attacked too. They rush by. We all do. This is one of the things about Jesus' parables. It touches on the humanity we have, the part that we don't always like to acknowledge, but is still there anyway. So the Levite and the priest are just terrified, and they keep going on. They don't stop. Now, they probably muttered and prayed and did all sorts of other things, but they didn't stop. It was the Samaritan, the one who probably would be disowned if this person was from anywhere in Judea. The Samaritan stopped. The one who was the social outcast risked life and limb to stop and do something. The ultimate question that the lawyer had asked Jesus is, who is my neighbor? Now, in Hebrew tradition, neighbor and stranger and alien have three different words. Neighbor was your partner, your friend, your relative, people you had maybe an intimate contact with, definitely a close contact with. And the lawyer was asking Jesus, who is this? Who do I have to pay attention to? Who do I have to give special care to? Jesus opened it up to not just the one you are connected to, but also the stranger and the alien, the outsider, the one that doesn't have any pretense to your home. The Samaritan was the alien. The person hurt was the stranger. Jesus was not about to give this lawyer an excuse for serving the people of God. When we are trying to do what's right according to what Jesus asked, there are no boundaries. It is not a matter of the Hebrew understanding of neighbor, which we in English kind of expand a little bit further to include the stranger. It wasn't just the people we know that we do things for. It's the people who are alien to us, who might not respect us, who might want to shoot us, quite frankly. It is the people who we kind of know around town, but we don't really know them, and so why should we have anything to do with them? It is everybody that is deserving of mercy. So when Jesus tells the lawyer, go and do likewise, that message is also for us. Go and take care of the people who you don't know. Take care of the people who are foreign to you, that scare you a little bit. Go into situations where you might be at risk. Now, there's all sorts of ways to mitigate that, but some people actually do live their life going into places where they could be hurt just to serve others, and we actually do hold them in higher regard and higher respect. The bottom line is, do stuff for the people around you. It can be as obvious as tending to medical needs, or it can be more subtle. But the act of mercy, the act of who my neighbor is, the act of how I show love of God, all of it comes down to how we treat people who won't necessarily benefit us back, but need the compassion, need the care that we have in abundance, because God gave us all of that care. It's our choice how to use it, and Jesus is very, very clear on his preference.